broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows. Interviewing celebrities and showrunners. And bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Sunday, Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. The weekend comes, my cycle hums. Ready to
Welcome to AfterBuzz. This is what we do.
I mean, this definitely fits with this.
Yeah, this doesn't sound like a tonal juxtaposition at all. No.
You know, guys, when I think about the first season of Fear the Walking Dead, this is the first song that comes to mind. So I just feel like it's a great way to open the episode. That's how I feel. Hey guys, what's going on? How's it going? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Fear the Walking Dead after show on AfterBuzz TV. I'm really excited to be here, guys. I really enjoyed this first season.
I couldn't tell.
And this song just puts me in a great mood.
There was a point in this week's episode, guys, where he had the biggest grin on his face. We'll get to it.
I wouldn't call myself happy. I was like a proud father is how I felt.
You're like, called it.
So welcome to the show, guys. This is the AfterBuzz TV for the Walking Dead After Show. I am Ben Bateman, one of the panelists on the show, joined by my three lovely co-hosts, Miss Kristin Carole.
Hey guys, how are you?
Megan Salinas.
Hey, everybody. Hope you're all not feeling too bad tonight.
And we have the lovely Ashley Chatman.
Hey guys, and I have to take this moment to publicly apologize to you, Ben, because I gave you so much flack this season about Liza, and yeah, we'll get into that, but yes.
No apologies
This is
necessary.
the one and only time a woman will admit she was wrong.
So guys, we're a team. You know what? We pick each other up, so don't even sweat it. Guys, I really liked the episode. This is the last episode of the first season. It's a short run. It's only 6 episodes. They'll be returning with 16 more next year.
Wow.
Yeah, which is pretty exciting.
Amazing, yeah.
And I definitely feel that this first 6 we got out of Fear the Walking Dead was vastly different than the first 6 we got out of the original Walking Dead. I think they just kind of knew what they were doing a little bit more. Obviously, it's not the same creators, but it wrapped up, and here we are, and we're going to get straight into the episodes. So before we do that really quickly, I do want to say you guys should check out the iTunes feed for this podcast. It would really help us continue to provide free content if you would give us a rating or a review. We love to do what we do. We have a great time, but obviously it has to be run by the people that are turning on the cameras and the lights here. So
Well, and thank you guys who have been giving us ratings as well. Like I don't know about you guys, but I definitely read everything.
Yes, 100%.
All of that, all of YouTube. So it's really great to be interactive, positive or negative. Definitely keep an eye on all of that. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how, like, I feel a little obsessive compulsive with my YouTube and iTunes check-ins. I reload for comments and views like a good 9 or 10 times a day on like any video.
I'm like, I already read that one. Okay, I already like that one. I already
and we actually have quite a few comments on the YouTube page. We've got 28 ratings, most of them 5 stars, and we've got let's see how many reviews. We've got 15 reviews from the show of just people commenting. Do we want to do a shout out or anything?
Yeah, feel
free. Okay, I don't have time to read all of these, but Cholo Biafra gave us 5 stars. Chupacabra's X, Brendan64, Puladin, star _ Lord, Just Beachin', Lady Harrison, Zayas Mommy, Chelsea 186, Can't Stop Bebop, Mama Little 7. Oh, I love Mama Little 7. Mama Little 7 comments on a bunch of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff. HBK Extreme, Price is Blue, X Do Not Play X, Kid WGM. All of these guys commented. Most of them gave 5-star ratings. You guys are the best. Thank you so much.
We love the interaction and we love the show. So it's really great to hear from everyone.
Yeah, like it's really nice too because so I listen to a lot of podcasts like on all different subjects, but I was thinking the other day about how infrequently, as much as I love them and I listen to them religiously, I actually would take the time to go to the iTunes feed and leave a comment if somebody didn't suggest it. So I realized that, and then when I look at the people that do comment, I'm like so much more appreciative because it's like an extra step you have to take. So it's awesome. Anyway,
Yes.
that is awesome. And the last thing I was going to say is that The Walking Dead returns next week, actually. And there's an AfterBuzz TV panel for that as well, at least same time, same place. So tune in for that as well. I suggest we get into the episode. What do you guys think?
Yes, let's get into it.
So episode 6, The Good Man, starts out with the crew packing up. We have the knowledge that cobalt means we're all going to die. So everybody starts packing up and loading stuff into a bag, and Travis's tone is a little different. We're getting out of here. We're doing this thing. They've tortured the young soldier. They have the information, and they start to get out of Dodge. What do you guys think?
I thought it was very interesting that, after 6 episodes and finding out about, the truth about cobalt, they were like, yeah, that original plan of go to the desert sounded pretty good. And that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I kind of felt this episode had a lot of the stuff that we kept predicting was going to happen. Like, not necessarily like specific plot points, but more like tonality shifts in characters, sort of the realizations, like the tipping points for a lot of the characters, the things that we thought were going to be very, I guess, sort of like iconic in each character's journey. A lot of those things happened in this one episode. They saved a lot of it for the last episode.
Well, even though I tend to think it was a little bit predictable, because when we were watching too, we were like, oh, well, this is going to happen if that happened and whatnot, especially.
Oh, they did this.
Yeah.
Oh, it happened.
We can talk about it. The Andy storyline in general specifically, and even the fact where we were all kind of talking about it last week, like, does Daniel open the arena or not? And it was a lot of stuff that just... Even though it was just predictable, I still like seeing it.
Yeah.
It's still kind of, when I was watching, I was like, oh, I knew that was going to probably happen, but all right, well, where do they take it then? Who does he shoot? Who does he not shoot? How does that happen with the arena with all the walkers coming to be there? So I just felt like we were all yelling. We had 3 of us watch together, and we were all yelling. It's like, don't let Andy go.
Right, exactly.
He's going to show up with a gun as soon as you're making your escape, and there he is.
That part was definitely a little frustrating for me when he shows back up so conveniently, and then he's just like... Anyway, we'll get into that a little later. But the biggest change that happened in this episode was that almost every single character had a moment of... and it's even said verbatim by Alicia to Chris later in the episode, you can't save everyone. And every character, I would say, had that moment of, I'm going to have to just not tell these people and leave them to die. And that was not something that was as consistent with the whole cast up until this episode, I felt. But as they're packing up and they're leaving the compound, and they're looking at the neighbors, and it's like... No, like, we just need to get out of here. Like, we need to save ourselves.
It was pretty heartless.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's crazy to think that, like, I think in some ways I would call it a flaw, not a fatal flaw, but a little bit of a flaw that it took 6 episodes to even really start to give me that payoff with so many of these characters when it seems so obvious to us, And
I think that going in season 2 might even be a little bit of the tone that will be set, because even Strand, and I can't remember the exact line that he said, but when they were leaving, he said something of, in order to save yourself, like, you have to leave other people behind, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So I think that it's all sinking in for everyone now that, while it is a fatal flaw in a sense, it's what's necessary for survival. And the rules have changed. Nobody is safe at this point. I mean, anybody can get it and be gone. So, I think going further into season 2, that's going to be interesting for them to have, as characters, have that settled in them, and then now have to sort of continue forward.
Well, because Dr. Exner says, who's family now? And she says, be brutal. And she starts to actually outline it. She says, she walks through it. Well, if you have the wife, the wife's husband, and then the children, and the boyfriend's sister, and then the mother, and it's like, who's your real family? Is it just this one person? And that's kind of what we talked about in an earlier episode, right? Is if you were really thinking about life in terms of just sort of like, at what point do I preserve myself? Hit the mic. That's when I hit the mic. At what point do I preserve myself? At what point do I preserve the person closest to me? Is it my parent? Is it my child? Who are you protecting at a certain point? And that's the be... Let me just keep hitting the mic. The be brutal idea is that's the terrifying part of this. And that's what this episode had a lot to do with it.
And how do you know when to let go of somebody that you really care about too? Because it's within the best interest of yourself and then the rest of the group too. So it's a lot of difficult decisions that you have to make, and they're kind of forced into it. So it'll be really interesting to see how they deal with that going forward. And the new seasons. And
Yeah, and when you're actually staring death in the face, you don't know how you're going to react. You don't know if you're going to run or if you're going to try to be the hero to save the people that you care about. And if you can't save everyone, then yeah, when do you make the tough call of who do you save? The way you were talking about it, you're like, oh, if you take this person, you have to take this person, and she's going to want to bring your kids. To me, that sounds a lot like sending out like wedding invitations.
Yeah.
Like, if I invite this person, I have to invite them, and then, let's just elope.
No, it gets to be like that. I think it's interesting, though, that we saw Daniel at the beginning where he was strictly just about, his wife and Ophelia. And then he seems to, in this episode, even... Now, obviously, if it came down to it, he's always going to pick Ophelia and his wife. But he did bring along this group with him. And it seems like he's embracing more of increasing his quote-unquote family at this point. Noticing that they are able to make the tough choices. I think the fact that Kim Dickens' character, Madison, was able to let him go and do the torture and didn't stop him. And I think that was really something that signified to him, like, okay, this is somebody who I can work with.
Right.
Yeah, and even going back to Strand, like you said, there was kind of a shift because he's like, I'm leading this operation. This guy was my ride, and now he's gone. We got to figure out an alternate plan. And then when he ends up getting saved by someone else, you can see it on his face at some point that he realizes he's now joined this group without ever meaning to. And the whole reason why he got Nick, he obligated him so that Nick owed him something, and now, inadvertently, without meaning to, he now owes these guys something.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So Andy, with a soldier who's been mutilated and tortured and is now locked up, they've found out where to go, but he's trying to bargain with Travis to stay alive because he's saying, in any way this ends, if you bring me with you, I'm dead. That's my only purpose, is to get you where you're going, and then you're going to kill me. Now, Travis doesn't kill him, and as we see later in the episode, and as you said, is sort of predictably shows back up and causes a problem. Why do we think Travis did that? And that's right. That's part of the story, is that he goes the one, and then the flip side of it later when he shows back up. It's supposed to be a big moment for him.
I think it's the whole idea of what even the title of the episode is called The Good Man. And I think that's Travis. He's trying to do the right thing all the time. And knowing that if he does bring him with, he's the only one that's really stopped any of this with Andy, and he does know, like, do I want to be put in that situation? And I think that's another part of it. Does he want to be in that situation where when the time comes, they get to the compound and Daniel wants to kill him, and the other people don't seem to stop him or may even help? Travis is going to have to be the one, so he'd rather figure, okay, let's get rid of this guy before anybody else knows, and he seems like a good guy, and he's just going to go away. And I think he kind of figures, like, ball's in this guy's court now. I've let him go. I'm the good man
right
I'm the
now.
good guy in the scenario.
Yeah.
And all season long, we've had different people, his wife, different soldiers. Everyone has referred to him as, "You're a good man, Travis." And I love the way it was put. See what doing the right thing gets you.
Right.
And it's absolutely right. It's, in his mind, this was the right thing to do, letting this guy go. And it came back, and he could have killed all of them. And, it would have been so easy, and they were very lucky that he didn't.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty fascinating, right, that you take a character like Travis, who, as we've said before, he's the sort of the cliche leader in the story like this, because his journey is very important to follow. And it's interesting, his character has been unwavering almost entirely this whole first season. But as the moral framework and the story surrounding him starts to change, him doing the right thing doesn't necessarily mean the right thing anymore, even if he can't see it, right? Just because by letting this guy go, which was the sort of the right thing, it's entirely the wrong thing, because the world doesn't work anymore. So this guy might not feel, oh, I've been saved, I need to go off and do something good in the world and try to survive. He's thinking, screw it, the world's over, I'm going to find this person and kill him because he tortured me and everyone's dead anyway.
Yeah.
And so doing the right thing just gets you in trouble, which is interesting, and we'll just continue to see more of that, I think.
Yeah, I guess for me, I kind of took it as this was the beginning of the end of the good man in Travis, and especially at the end, when we see that flip in him and he switches and he kind of succumbs to that more carnal instinct.
It really is like a switch being flipped,
it
because
is.
immediately he reacted.
I think he's so mad at himself too. That's why I think he does it so fast.
I guess my biggest issue with him letting him go was, I can understand how he could rationalize it was the good thing, but you didn't think that maybe this guy would try and go and basically tell the other soldiers, and then that would somehow negatively impact your family. Like, I just would have thought things through a little bit more, and it just seemed a little too impulsive for the decisions that he's made in the past. Like, he seems to have always really considered and weighed both sides. Maybe it was just the rush at the moment that made him sort of make that impulse move, but I just would have considered, okay, if I let this guy go, what if he tries to take one of my kids, what if he tries to hostage?
Exactly.
What if he tries to come out back and attack us? Like, I don't know. For me, it seemed like a very impulsive move.
Well, let's just chat about it for a second, because obviously we keep alluding to something that happens later in the episode, and we will get to obviously that point in the episode. But as far as Travis's reaction, so when Andy shows back up with the gun, and he just sort of is lurking in the parking garage randomly, and he shoots
like
Ophelia
a creeper
in the shoulder, and then Travis runs over and beats him pretty much to death.
Yeah.
Two things came to mind for me. Number one, Travis is very angry at himself, and that was what I took away from it, is that he's angry at Andy, but he doesn't even think about it. It's more like, I think he was 51-49 on a decision to leave him alive in the first place, knowing that it was probably going to get him in trouble, or could. And then I think the fact that it does, and he sees somebody who is truly a good person get shot in front of him needlessly, it was sort of like getting a parking ticket when you don't need to, and how angry that makes you. This could have been so easily avoided.
I was coming back to put money in the meter. Why?
Yeah.
I feel like it's that meme with Tyra Banks where she's like, I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. And he comes back, and I think that's what Travis is thinking, is like, okay, he's just going to go out, and I saved you, and you're good. And then he comes back, and it's like, what the heck? I was rooting for you to be a good person and not
Well, I
come and do
just
this.
took it as him just finally being, like, everything really sinking in, and him just exploding. Because up until this point, he wasn't on the violent streak. He wanted to rationalize. He wanted to settle things peacefully. And at this point, it was like, okay, enough is enough, and just rage ensues. And then, again, he trusted this guy. He trusted him. He believed that everything that he said, he took him at his word, and he lied. He betrayed him. So he's, to experience that over and over again, it's really like, okay, this is how the world is now. So I've got to play by new rules.
And it's a betrayal on numerous levels, because the soldiers were supposed to protect them, and they found out about Cobalt, and then this guy promised, he begged for his life, and probably promised that he wouldn't be a problem, and then sure enough broke that promise. So we actually have a comment on the hashtag ABTVFear from Anna Lal. The fact that Andy shot Ophelia really surprised me. And I did, that was a very interesting moment, because he has the gun pointed at her dad, and he looks over at Ophelia, and he looks back at her dad, and there's that moment of, this is what's actually going to hurt you. And that's when he chooses to shoot Ophelia instead, because he's like, no, that's going to hurt him way more than if I actually shoot and kill him.
He also, I think he probably felt like more shamed and played by her also than
I'm sure
the
it was
dad.
a combination of both. Yeah.
I don't know about that, because, even before the torture started happening, her dad was very adamant that she's a good person. She didn't know.
Yeah.
I lied to her to get you into this position. So he's probably not happy with her, obviously, but, we know who the mastermind is here.
Absolutely. So I do want to move on to the next section, but before we do that, something came to mind for me, and I'm going to see if I can not tangent this too hard, because it's sort of like a longer thought. But as a creative person, I'm a songwriter, and I've been a songwriter my whole life. And so I've written a lot of pop music, and pop by nature is sort of predictable. So when I write a song, you can go a very easy route, and you can stick with a very simple structure, and you can write something that sort of ties a bow on it, if you will, to finish the song. Or you can try to outsmart yourself, because you think that you should be able to do something more interesting. But you need to remember your audience, right? If you're writing for an audience that wants really complicated pop music, then maybe you want to do that. If not, maybe simpler is better. In the case of this show and its writing, what comes to mind for me when I see something like Andy showing back up like that, seemingly out of nowhere, why would he be hiding in this parking garage? Maybe he's waiting for them, but honestly, everything is going to hell outside. Why is he not trying to get out of there? It's just so convenient that he would show up at that moment. It reminded me a lot of the finale of last season of Walking Dead, when, to prove a point, It's like there's a zombie that sneaks into the compound at the same time that the abusive husband shows up, and Rick all of a sudden is vindicated, and all of a sudden he gets to kill the woman abuser and kill the zombie and be like, I was right, and it all comes with a bow on it right now.
And then Morgan right there.
Right. And so for me, it's like that's in this moment, I sort of felt that like we're an intelligent audience. This doesn't need to be a simple pop song. But as a creator, I think it's difficult to decide, do I want to do something simple like tie a bow on it? Because in theory, when you imagine it, well, and then Andy shows back up and creates this problem, and that triggers Travis to change into the character that we all know he needs to become. And that's the catalyst for it. It's simple. It gets us where we need to go. But as an audience member, I think I'm more intelligent than that. I think we are. I feel kind of cheated by that.
Do you think the only reason maybe they did something like that, and that just goes to show like maybe they didn't want to drive the audience mad about what happens to Andy, so then if he didn't come back and he wasn't beaten to a pulp, are we all going to sit there and watch for him, and they don't want us to be distracted that way? Because if you think about that with Game of Thrones, everybody, you know, he's supposed, I'm not spoiling anything if you don't know, Jon Snow is possibly dead,
Right.
You know, everybody over the summer is now still kind of like, well, we didn't actually see him like officially die, and we're seeing him on the set and all this kind of stuff, and it's creating this big hype, which is what that show wants, especially since it's on hiatus. But I think for this show, I don't think they want it to be a distraction from the personal elements of it. So maybe that's the only thing I would think as a creator is like, well, let's give them what they're anticipating. Let's close the book on this Andy thing so we can move on to go west.
Well, and the thing is, if Andy doesn't come back, then Travis was right. And the whole point of this entire season seems to be, you know,
prove him wrong.
Do the right thing and see where it gets you.
Yeah, I think the point of it was just they knew that Travis needed to have a semi-arc in this episode. And obviously everything that happened with Andy, it had to come full circle for the season finale. So I think that it was just the writer saying, okay, we know we have to get to this point. How can we tie in these two stories so that we care? Because if it was just, you know, some random, you know, soldier, like the soldiers who were beating up on
Chris
and Alicia, then I don't know how much weight it would have held for us as an audience. Like, would it have really, you know, hit us hard?
Yeah.
If it wasn't somebody that we had spent some time with. You know,
I guess my point is the alternative. I guess I should have finished the song thought with, I don't always know how to write a complicated pop song that everybody likes. You can try, and it pisses people off sometimes because it's trying too hard.
Yeah.
And often, if you try to do something creative and you try to go outside the norm to get really clever, your audience will be like, A, I don't get it, or B, you're trying way too hard. True Detective Season 2 is like that in a nutshell. The whole season is trying so
way too hard
to be so cool. And at the end, you're just like, this is just weird, and a lot of it doesn't make sense, and it misses me. I want a simpler story.
So is that how we feel about this particular season, Walking Dead?
No, I thought this was great. I just that one moment just for me was a little simple. But I think we'll keep talking about those themes because obviously the episode is all connected. So let's move to the next, where we get to the compound, and Daniel has let the zombies out of the stadium.
I gotta say, I mean, I get it, being that the stadium was so close, but by releasing all those zombies, I was like, I feel like this creates more problems than it solves.
Totally. Like I was thinking, your family and the people you're trying to save, one of whom you think is alive and is crippled, are inside the compound.
How is this a good idea?
How are you going to get your wife with the infected foot, or who's maybe healthy now, out of the compound when it's surrounded by zombies?
I mean, especially if they were trying to go fast, like I think if their idea was to go more fast than they were going at that point in time, it may have been better. But the fact that they weren't, and it was like sun rising when they were leaving. I mean, obviously other stuff is happening while they're in there, but it just didn't quite go according.
In his defense, he's not one. Daniel isn't one to think things through.
Sure.
He's a very much like, this is what has to be done, and no, you can't tell me any other way. So let's get some ball cutters.
And to be fair, if drastic action wasn't taken, they were all going to get bombs dropped on them. And like, this is the same group of people that essentially condemned everyone who's still alive in Los Angeles to die.
Well, and they're probably still going to take care of the rest of them that way. Whatever military is left, I'm sure that's still part of the plan.
That's the plan, definitely. And so I was sort of imagining like Daniel, like in theory, with like a gun or bolt cutters or something, clipping the bolt
And running.
and then not getting knocked over by the door,
Right.
and then running top speed to get away from the zombies, and then calming down,
stopping and being
slowing,
like, come
and like did he have a cigarette in his hand? Did I just make that up?
Yeah, no, I don't think he did.
He didn't walk
He had
and
a
smoke cigarette?
flashlight.
Okay, it was
He
a
had a
flashlight.
flashlight. Yeah, he's just like,
That would be really funny.
there
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
Nice night.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Should have had a cigar. Would have been amazing.
So it starts to go crazy, right? The zombies come out, the chaos ensues, and we have two things happening at once, right?
It was almost rehearsed. It was almost like he was like, all right, guys, in 5, 6, 7, 8, and walk.
Yeah. So inside.
That's in the outtakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like
Deleted
like a
scenes.
tap
Yeah.
dancing routine.
I would love a zombie musical, guys. I'm just gonna say that right now.
Hey, talk to-
Zombie song and dance number.
Talk to Kirkman. Fear the Walking Dead is basically like Walking Dead Los Angeles. Maybe look at Walking Dead the musical, Walking Dead Miami. Like,
I would watch that.
Yeah. I wouldn't be
Walking Dead
surprised.
takes Broadway.
Yeah, franchised. So you have the gang, Travis and Alicia and Chris. They're all trying to sneak into the compound from one of the side fences with bolt cutters, which I was imagining like soldiers would probably be like looking around, like, are we getting flanked? And they would just shoot them, but maybe not. Maybe they're just so distracted because there's so many zombies. And then also inside, you have Liza being told by Dr. Exner as she realizes that no one's going to make it.
Yeah.
Get out of here. Save yourself. And these two things are happening simultaneously, right? At the same time, you have Strand and Nick escaping from their cages. So all three of these things at the compound happening at the same time. Let's start with Strand and Nick. I like Strand a lot. He's a good character.
I like him.
Strolled on out of there with style, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't running at all. It's just like you got such swag walking out of there, him and Nick. Just
Lot
kind
of
of like
swagger, yeah.
whatever.
I kind of took it, or I read it as confident, like just very confident. And I wondered why he has this confidence. It's almost as like he knew this was happening. And obviously throughout the whole episode, we see that he's very prepared.
Right.
And he knows how to move through this strategically, almost like he's one step ahead of everybody. So, yeah, I just was questioning, how does this guy just so calm and collected and confident, like,
Total
Yeah,
sociopath.
even-
Total
He hangs
sociopath.
out with Tobias. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
They're buddies.
Even when his plan, goes awry and like his ride disappears and they get cornered, he still reacts in a very calm, composed manner. Like almost like he's like, oh, well, if this is it, then this is it. That's kind of a bummer.
Well, I think that he's a sociopath, first of all. Not in the sense like a total sociopath, not like a psychopath. But I think he's a sociopath in the sense the way that he talks about everything, it's all
Kind of detached, right?
completely. It's all in terms of value, right? I will gentrify the shit out of that neighborhood, I think is one of his lines that he says, right? Or earlier when he's talking to the guy about his wife and talking about her body and how it could be sold, essentially. Or later when he says there's no value in letting these people go, we don't gain anything from it. So I think in his mind, the world's going crazy and there's dead people walking around. In his mind, he's like, okay, these are dead people walking around, so what's the most strategic and efficient way for me to maneuver around this to continue to save myself and like profit from, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, this is also the same guy that has a boat prepared for like eventual infrastructure collapse. Who does that?
It's crazy. I love him.
Yeah.
I like the way he dresses too. Good
Christopher
suits.
Walken, blast from the past.
Probably my favorite shot the entire episode was when right before they escaped and he's just sitting down he's framed right in between the chain link fence.
Yeah.
That was just such a really great shot.
Shout out to Dallas Jackson in the chat who says Strand equals swag apocalypse master. Yeah, that
he's
should
like-
be his new name.
He's like sitting there between, and he's like straightening his tie.
yeah, he's
I was
just
thinking-
swagged out.
I was like thinking to myself, I was like, man, if I was like in a suit and this was happening around me, I was like, would I continue?
You're in a suit now.
But I'm saying like, if the apocalypse was happening,
Yeah.
Would you continue to wear your suit?
would I straighten my tie? Would I get my cufflinks back?
Right.
I don't
No.
know.
Yeah, you're gonna take time to go get those cufflinks.
Yeah.
And then
Keep the watch.
Taunt the guy. Yeah, keep the watch. It's fine.
Yeah. So they're getting out. They maneuver through the whole thing. They get trapped in an alleyway. They rendezvous with Travis and with Kim Dickens, who Madison, yes, who saves them in the hallway. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Was there a moment where you guys were worried at all?
There, I actually was slightly worried about Nick just because there's that moment when he and Madison lock eyes and he's like, Mom, just go.
Yeah.
And but the second Liza showed up with her key card, I was like, oh, okay, they're going to be fine.
I knew that a convenient something was going to come out. I wasn't super, I just thought maybe Strand wouldn't make it. That's the only thing I was a little concerned about. But at this point, we don't really care too much about him as a character. We don't know too much, I
Although,
would
like,
say.
now, by the time we get to the end of the episode, it's like, wow, that, like, I want to know more about this guy.
Yeah.
He's proven himself to be a very interesting, intriguing character that we should
Totally.
find out
And we
more
know
about.
so little about him, but we know just enough to be like, what is this guy's story?
To be like, is he trying to fool you guys with IKEA furniture and thinking it's nice? Or are you guys trying to fool us as an audience with IKEA furniture? And us thinking
We had the
it's
same
nice?
glasses when I was watching that.
Yeah.
I go to Megan, I'm like, you drank out of that glass on Friday. It's the exact same
Hey,
one.
IKEA is, a
It's
step
good
up for some
I
people.
got no
okay?
problem with IKEA. Like, it's just so funny because he's like this big,
Right. Oh,
expensive
yeah.
Like
house. And he's
beachfront
like,
property.
IKEA
Yeah.
glass. I
Totally.
love it.
Well, I think IKEA also, like, it, by nature, is based on far more expensive products. Like IKEA is, like, generally... Swag apocalypse.
Hashtag. Thank you.
swag
Thank you
apocalypse.
guys in the
The booth is
the booth,
giving us
yes.
hashtag swag apocalypse.
Yeah,
I love
like
it.
Swag apocalypse.
Yeah, it's not an extra A.
To like speak to your point, okay, IKEA stuff is like actually quite nice, but more than that, IKEA stuff is based design-wise on stuff that is far, far, far nicer. So it's actually very difficult to tell often if something is actually IKEA or if it's just IKEA ripping off like a $14,000 couch and selling it for $1,000.
Yeah.
So anyway, Strand, awesome.
Yeah.
He's great. He saves them. So then we have underground. We have Chris and Alicia, who get the car stolen, and there's that moment with the soldier that we all sort of saw coming at some point.
Yeah.
We knew there would be that first moment of like, uh-oh, she's an unprotected female, and this is the world is going to hell, and there's a bunch of dudes. When is this moment going to happen where you're like, uh-oh.
Steven called it
Yeah.
technically.
Stephen called. I'm
they
glad the
didn't-
show.
They stopped it.
I'm glad the show didn't actually go that route. And I actually really like what the showrunner for Hannibal, when that show was on,
Yeah.
had to say about that sort of thing. He was like, yeah, it's not handled properly in the media. I'm never going to do that in my show. So I'm really glad that Fear the Walking Dead decided not to steer in that direction.
They did enough, I thought. I thought that was totally enough.
But I don't know what it would have served in that particular setting because it was just Chris and Alicia. It'd be one thing if the parents were there, if there were other, I guess,
Right.
more important major characters there to sort of take that in. But with it just being the two of them, I didn't see that particular storyline really. I don't know. I mean, I just didn't see how that would play out and have a huge effect on the characters.
The problem is that if they were to go that route, it would have been more about Chris's reaction to it, which is not the way to handle it.
Well, we kind of saw that. I mean, he was, sticking up for her and stuff. And I know we had a couple of comments on YouTube that were saying that, we want these two together. And I know you said you like them together. And
Yes,
I think
yes.
Total
I think
fan.
that was another moment that was showing that the relationship.
It's more about their budding romance, maybe.
Yeah, I don't like that. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean,
I'm not a fan of it.
I was gonna say the moment that if they were gonna go that route, what would have happened is they would have hit Chris, who would have been on the ground, and then something like it would have gone like one step further, and then something would have happened like Strand would have walked in with a gun and just executed all 3 soldiers, or Travis would have walked in and killed everyone, and it would have been this moment of like, oh my god, so shocking,
Yeah.
but they're doing it because this is such an intense scene. That's what they would have done, and they might do it again later because it's the apocalypse and it only gets worse from here.
Yeah.
Can we talk about why, if she was the getaway driver, why was he sitting in the driver's seat? Why?
True, yeah.
All that would have done would mean that they'd have to switch seats when it was time to make their getaway. Makes no sense to me.
That was a lot of stuff you kind of have to just suspend your disbelief and be like, I'm not going to question it.
So let's
go with it.
let's keep moving because I want to try to get to everything before we wrap.
Oh, yeah, it's getting late, guys.
So after the daring escape inside, in which a ton of prisoners are left behind, some are freed, some are definitely freed by Madison and Travis as they're leaving. Sorry.
It was a very emotional scene. It was okay.
And they rendezvous with Chris and Alicia. And then obviously we've already talked about Andy and the shot and shooting Ophelia in the shoulder, and Travis beating him pretty much to death, but then like his hands being mostly okay in the car, like not like inoperable, which I think at that point if he had done that, his hands would be like
Be
almost
like,
inoperable.
well,
He
I
was
can't
kind of
drive
shaking
now.
now, and
Yeah.
his hands were all bloody. So I don't know. He's been going for runs. Who knows what else he's been exercising with.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Exner just executing all the prisoners and staying behind before we move on?
We did have that moment where Liza was trying to get her to come with us, and again we had another comment from Anna Lal, wondering if the reason for that was that she was trying to get somebody who had genuine medical expertise to come with them.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, it's easy to look at what she did and go, like, that was the wrong thing to do. That was a terrible thing. But the place is being overrun by zombies, and these patients are either going to suffer a horrible death at the hands of those zombies and or become zombies, or she can humanely kill them before that happens. And this is one of those things where it's like, well, what is the right thing to do? Because she can't, like... that was another theme this episode, is that you can't save everyone.
Right.
Yeah. And so in her mind, this was the best alternative. And it's heart-wrenching because, if you're in that situation, what do you do?
But I didn't know if I cared too much about Dr. Exner, only because her character has seemed very off-putting throughout the entire...
Detached.
Very
the whole
detached and
time.
off-putting, so, I mean, I wasn't rooting for her to go with them and live. I think she did what she felt was the lesser of two evils. These people were already suffering and in pain. Might as well put them out their misery before they're just torn to bits by, walking zombies. So, I mean, her deciding to stay, it just didn't hold as much weight for me because, she was off-putting for the entire couple season episodes.
You get into a situation like this, like a really genuinely traumatic, horrible disaster. As a doctor, I kind of feel like you have to do that a little bit in order to actually do your job. So I can understand where she was coming from.
I think early on, you guys remember we had a conversation talking about how now with like zombie media, we'll call it, is so different than 6 years ago because the stereotypes and all the plot lines, they've been just riffed on so hard. I mean, mostly by The Walking Dead, but other shows as well. So, and I was saying how I think the show has the opportunity to be more intelligent than we've seen in the past because it can take those stereotypes and those expectations and it can twist them just a little bit. And one of the things I liked about her character in the end is that we didn't actually see her die. I'm assuming she's dead, but...
She took that gun.
Yeah,
she's holding it.
They were heavily inferring that she was going to die.
100%. Yeah. But from day one, she's very off-putting. She seems like kind of a villain. She sort of seems like she's going to be involved in something pretty bad happening. But aside from taking Nick to the compound, like she actually ends up just being kind of vanilla, which is interesting because you just do meet people in life sometimes that are off-putting. They're not always up to no good. Yeah. She wasn't. She was just, as you said, maybe detached because she's a doctor. Who knows? And it's great because it didn't betray us as an audience. It actually just gave us something interesting to think about. And she didn't just turn out to be a villain just because she felt like it or the music played that way.
I just feel like from an audience perspective, I didn't care as much about her because she was off-putting. And maybe that was the point. It's just that there's going to be a lot of people that they interact with who you're not going to have a whole lot of time with. And they were there for a moment, maybe to make a point, maybe to help a character along in their arc. But, it was kind of quick for me, in and out, and I just didn't. It didn't hold too much for me.
Certainly, yeah.
I think the whole point with her is that she was one of the types of people to say things that other people won't. And, she's, again, because she has to be detached for her job, she's the one that's going to be brutally honest.
Yeah.
Definitely. So they hop in the car. They head to the beach. They head to Pepperdine. I heard you saying you thought it was Pepperdine.
At one point when they're looking
Shout
over
out
the
Pepperdine.
ocean, it looked like a little area at the top of Drescher. I was like, that looks really familiar.
We're Pepperdine alums.
Yeah, I don't know if Pepperdine super well, but I definitely, I've driven like down the PCH
That
a
view.
number of
It's
times.
beautiful.
Yeah, gorgeous. So they get to the house. The generator has kicked in because the electricity's done, and as you guys already alluded to, Strand is sort of in this obligation relationship now with this group. So he's decided to sort of save them. But he also seems like this sort of value-oriented person. So you're sort of wondering why he's giving as much as he's giving.
Yeah.
Now they're at the house. I kept thinking there was going to be a double cross or some turn.
Yeah.
But
Like it's not actually his house
or something
like that.
Yeah, it just
He's a cannibal or something crazy.
right.
Yeah.
Something. I thought about him selling him out, but I don't think there's cannibalism quite yet. We're not quite there yet. So they get to the house
I show you
and
the look on your face. It's great.
Terminus hasn't been invented.
yeah. We find out a few things once we're at the house. We find out that Strand has a boat. We see it through
Alicia, right?
Alicia.
Or Abigail.
Abigail.
Which is exciting, and I
Other A.
definitely like that they are giving us that. We find out that Liza has been bitten, and she's going to die after she has a touching moment where she tells Chris she loves her. And we find out, lastly, that... What am I forgetting? Is that pretty much it?
Well, yeah, I mean...
Oh, that Ophelia is going to be okay. She actually isn't dead. She's the
She was
medicine's
shot in the
gonna work.
arm, it looked like.
It was kind of a weird way to put it though, was she can survive this, not she will.
Yeah, and she might not. I mean, they just might be like dangling
Explore
the first
that, yeah.
someone that is dying of infection, and you have to let them go kind of storyline.
And I think it's kind of interesting too, when she was telling Daniel everything to do, I was watching and I'm like, wait, they're all together, like, is she just putting it on him because technically she's his responsibility? It's like, that just seems a little weird for her character.
Yeah.
And then the fact that when she exposed that she was bitten, I was like, oh, okay,
That's why
she's
I mean,
like,
this
he
is
should
your
know
responsibility
anyways.
now. Yeah.
But the fact that she said that specifically, I was like, that's a little strange, because it seems like they're just going to all be together anyways.
Yeah.
So why can't she help out? But I wasn't expecting her to be bitten, to be honest with that. And I need to like rewatch to see when that happened, because I did not catch that.
It's got to be in the exchange in the kitchen at the or the kitchen or whatever area they were fighting around in at the compound. But a couple things that came to mind for me, because I wanted to make sure we hit these, and then definitely want to get to predictions and favorite moments quickly before we wrap it up. But so when you think about each character in the main cast, right? We all admitted earlier that Griselda was probably going to eat it. I don't think that was a hard prediction early, just because, as you said, she wasn't in the later promos. And her, as an elderly woman, like in this situation, who gets her ankle broken, it just didn't seem like there was a whole lot. No. Then I started to think about once Ophelia got shot in the arm. And I started to try to figure out, like, is she alive? Is she dead? And what purpose has she served so far as a character, aside from to drive Daniel? Because Daniel seems to be a very important character, because he's like sort of the other moral linchpin. He's the other side of Travis, who's like the main dude. Him and I guess Madison to some degree, but it seems like they're sort of the heart of it. So then I was thinking, without her, you don't lose too much. She's already been a driving force for a lot of Daniel, so she's actually not as important as I thought she was. And more so than ever, once they showed that Liza was bitten, everything that I predicted early was like, not necessarily how she would die, but it was more like the purpose she would serve long term in that relationship, that group dynamic. Didn't seem like it was going to make a whole lot of sense. It was going to be kind of hitting the same buttons over and over again.
Yeah.
And so I think that actually made a lot of sense to me. But were you guys surprised that Travis shows up and has to do it?
I was. I mean, again, knowing the title of the episode being The Good Man, it completely and totally makes sense. But I still really liked the idea of, this kind of being Madison's origin story as a villain. And so to me, I thought that would make more sense. And I thought that it would have made her a more active participant, because so far in a lot of the different things that have been happening, she's been very passive in allowing, these terrible things to happen. She allowed Daniel to do the torture. So this would be like her first act and her first step in that direction.
Sure.
So I was a little disappointed that Travis felt the need to do it, but at the same time, it's like, well, it's the title of the episode. It makes sense.
Well, and then it's funny, because I shared that theory with Madison last week that I'd read about, and so I was kind of looking at it, and a couple of people on YouTube had said, actually, I feel like this is more of Travis's origin story as the villain. So now I'm like watching, maybe it's just the couple.
Maybe they'll be like this crazy power couple villain.
like a zombie Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah.
I just wonder who's going to end up being Carole. She's the most interesting character from a journey perspective in the original show, and I wonder if somebody's going to have that cool of a...
Well, somebody said in the comments or the chat earlier said that Strand was like a mix of Carole and the governor, which may or may not play out. But I mean, I personally, I feel like it was... I didn't like Travis having to shoot her, but I felt like there would have been a lot of tension between Travis and Madison had Madison shot her, and that would have caused, I think, too much conflict. And it's his ex-wife. I felt like it was his responsibility, his son's mother. Why would you let your fiance do it?
Well, and also to add to that, I feel like any of these secrets they're not going to keep. So even if he kept it that Madison was the one that shot her, Chris is going to end up finding out somehow, and then he's going to have a lot of disdain for her.
Yeah.
His
it puts it all on
stepmom.
Travis, which I feel like at this point he feels like it should be all on him.
And and he sort of needs that from a character standpoint. So aside from essentially the conversation between Nick and Madison, which is an interesting moment. We can sort of riff on that because I want to get predictions here. But just about how the world is crazy, and it's always been crazy for him. I think that was an interesting kind of sweet moment.
Yeah, the world is finally catching up to me.
I want to, I think it was Anna, that LOL, that was also tweeting you, but she had a question for us, which actually I was thinking about at the end of the show, was, did any of you guys think something was going to happen in the water at the end? And I definitely felt like we were going to, because it looked like it was red at certain points.
Yeah.
So I felt like we were going to see a little bit more that way. And then because of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. last season, with everything in the water, for that, I just was suspecting something with that, or if we saw maybe something on the boat that was going to trigger us to be like, because we seem to know more than this group anyways, just because of The Walking Dead. Are we going to know that this boat, maybe if there was a crew on it, did they turn and then they're just going to go to this boat that has walkers on it already?
Let's wrap that up in predictions because we are just unfortunately out of time. But
Your AfterBuzz TV prediction.
Oh, no light show?
I know. We're gonna go lightning round on the predictions.
Lightning fast.
So in case you are thinking and it's too difficult on the spot to come up with a prediction, I'm gonna say prediction or a favorite moment from the season. Lightning round. Who wants to jump in and start?
I mean, zombies on a plane. That's what's coming up next, right?
We know that's coming up, yeah.
And given that, we have a boat coming up. It's going to be zombies on a boat. Here's hoping that we get a reenactment from that one Italian zombie movie where a zombie fights a shark. Here's hoping we get The Walking Dead's take on that.
Yeah.
Is that too much to ask?
I hope we don't get that. I hope you're joking.
I am. It's not something that belongs in this show,
legit.
but it's something that brings me a lot of joy.
I think Chris is going to struggle a lot with Liza's death, and that's going to be, an interesting play for the next coming season. I think hopefully Nick will beat his addiction, and he'll sort of evolve into a more mature, useful character.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that we are going to get on the boat, and I think the boat is going to be the sort of like the centerpiece of the next season. And I think that they will end up taking the boat somewhere awesome, and we're going to get to sort of get like somewhere in the second season.
Zombies in Cabo.
We're gonna get like a second location, maybe. Yeah, I mean it could be like Mexico or something. It could be really cool. I don't know.
Catalina.
Gilligan's Island.
Catalina
guys.
could be good. What about you?
I think I don't have a prediction except that if it does really well, they might have it at Halloween Horror Nights.
Great prediction.
I don't know. There's just so much going on. I think just getting to the boat's going to be a huge problem for them, and I think I don't think it'll help Ophelia or somebody else to take that journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Side note about Halloween Horror Nights this year, The Walking Dead's maze is supposedly the longest one they've done, like the longest maze that they've done in Horror Nights history.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be sure to check it out, as well as be sure to come back next week to check out. Next Sunday is the Walking Dead premiere.
Yeah.
The 11th.
So I thought you were saying next week.
Well, we're not there next week,
Yeah,
but we're on the
both
panel
missing it.
otherwise. But check out Joyce and Daryl, Christian, and whoever their special host is.
It's going to be
Guest
super
host.
awesome. Guys, where can they find you if they want to find you?
You guys can find me at Kristin Carole 13 on both Twitter and Instagram.
You guys can follow me on Twitter at @TheMenguin. That's TheMenguin. Thank you to everybody in the hashtag. You guys are great.
Yeah. Find me on Instagram, Twitter, Ashley_Chatman. Thank you guys in the chat. Shout out to you all for your comments, your questions, and see you guys next season. Have a good one.
I'm Ben Bateman. You guys can find me at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week and next season.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.